Hi YouTube, it's Janelle here. Woo, I'm finally back from my trip to Rome and it was a long one. I was away for like a whole month and my last video that I posted was in December when I announced that I was gonna be moving to a new apartment and that I was gonna be taking a 30-day vacation, which a lot of people commented how do you take a 30-day vacation? And the reality is, well, you have to save up money in order to take a long vacation that way, and you also need to be able to have a job that's flexible with vacation time. I'm very lucky to have both, so I was able to plan this ahead of time. And I also talked about how I overlapped the ending of my lease with the time that I take off from work. Before I jump into this video, I just want to let you guys know that every single Thursday I post videos, except for this hiatus that I took for a month to travel and to just get my life together. But my New Year's is pretty much starting now, so I'm going to be posting new videos in 2020 every Thursday at noon. So come back to the channel to check out new content. In this video, I'm going to be going over a couple different things. First, I'm just going to tell you where I was for 30 days while I was away, and then because I didn't just go to Rome, and then I'm going to look at the budget for my trip. So what did I spend, where did the money go, and what are the different categories that I broke up my budget in. Now, if you didn't know, I left New York City on December 16th and I flew straight to Rome. It was a direct flight, which was super easy to go from New York to Rome. It was a little long, but at least I didn't have any connections or anything like that, which made it a smooth trip. But when I got to Rome, I didn't have to get on my cruise for a few days. So I went to Rome because that's where the cruise was departing from, and I took about a almost 2 weeks long cruise, and it went from Rome to Venice. From Venice, it went to Dubrovnik, which is in Croatia. It went to Kotor, which is in Montenegro, and then it went back to Italy, where we were in Florence and Pisa, and then it also went to Monte Carlo, which is in Monaco, and then for New Year's Eve, it was in Barcelona, which is where I spent New Year's Eve, and I posted about it on my Instagram. And then after Barcelona, it went back to Rome, which is where it originally started, and that's where I ended, which was on January 2nd. On January 3rd, we flew from Rome to London. Now, the reason why I flew from Rome to London, which is a little bit annoying, and I definitely don't recommend it unless you are on a super budget, going from Rome to Florida, which is where I needed to be in mid-January for work, was a lot more expensive than going from Rome to London, spending one day in London, and then going from London to Florida. That was literally a fourth of the price than if I was to just fly from Rome to Florida. So because I had already, you'll see in a second, I had already spent so much money on my trip, I was like, we gotta cut costs everywhere I can because I didn't want to go over budget. And so I ended up basically going to London, just spending a full day in London, and then coming from London back to the US, landing in Miami in Florida, which is where I needed to be anyway. So I kind of was in Florida for the past 2 weeks, just going from different places. Tampa, Fort Lauderdale, was in Naples, and then was in Miami. So a little bit of friends, visiting friends, and a little bit of family too, which the nice part about being in Florida for 2 weeks after I came back from the vacation was that I also got to come from cold weather to hot weather, but also because I was staying with mostly family and friends, I didn't really have to spend money on housing while I was in Florida. So that was really nice because I could save money there since I spent a little bit more money on the trip. The total cost of my trip going from December 16th through January 17th, and not including all the times that I stayed with family and friends and anything that was free because I was there for work, I was able to expense for work, like staying at hotels and certain cab rides and things like that. But not including all of that stuff, which I didn't have to come out of pocket for, the trip was still pretty expensive. It was a total of $3,300 out of pocket. Now, normally, I do not spend $3,300 in just 1 month unless I'm splurging in that month, because my rent is a little bit under $1,500, or was when I was living in the other apartment. But now that I moved to a new apartment, it's gonna go down significantly. And so because of that, it's just, it's gonna be really nice to save money on that rent. But my goal was to try to just only really spend the amount of money that I would spend in 1 month on the trip anyway. So I wouldn't have to pay rent. Great. I don't have to buy groceries. Great. I don't have to pay gas, electric, and all that stuff. All that money would just go directly to the trip. So, that being said, the $3,300 was still a lot. It comes out to about $100, a little bit more than $100 per day. And for me, I'm comfortable with that. The most expensive thing, hands down, was the cost of the cruise and the flight to get to Rome from New York. The cruise and that flight were about $2,500 combined. And I think the reason why the cruise was a little bit expensive is because one, it was a like 13 or 14 day long cruise, which is, you know, a really long cruise, but also because it went to so many different countries and so many different cities. And while I was on the cruise boat, everything on the cruise was included. It was all inclusive. So I was able to eat. I was able to like go do any of the activities on the boat, all the things that were there. I didn't really have to come out of pocket and pay extra unless it was like something that was like an excursion when you get off the ship. So because of that, it's like it was a little pricey, but it did include meals and it included the room while I was on the cruise. So it kind of made sense. But after the cruise and the flight, the most expensive thing for sure was food and drinks. So anytime I got off the boat and I was walking around looking at a new city or exploring a new place, definitely eating like lunch or having dinner was a temptation, and I was okay with that because I wanted to try different foods in different countries and have like wine in different countries and stuff like that. But I was still pretty budget friendly. A lot of the days we were at sea, so I couldn't really get off of the ship until we landed on to the next place, so the cruise ship. So basically what I ended up spending on food and drink was about a little bit under $300, about $260. And again, you know, for me, I would think it was worth it because I was trying new foods in new countries. I had, you know, these are places that a lot of them I had never been to before. And, you know, trying wine, which it was actually relatively cheap for considering the price that you would pay for wine in New York City, like where I usually buy wine and food. It was actually not that expensive. So for me, I'm like, all right, you know, $260 wasn't so bad. The next most expensive thing after the food and drinks was excursions, which was a little bit under $160. It was like $157 and change. And the reason why the excursions wasn't so expensive either was because a lot of times the excursions on the boat, what they do is they're real slick, right? They'll tell you, so for example, when we pulled up into Florence, we were a little bit further out from Florence and Pisa. So in order to get from the port where the cruise pulled in to Florence and to Pisa, you had to take a bus. But with the cruise ship, you could just book the bus ride with them. But it was like 160 euros, something like that per person. So I kind of knew like that seems a little bit unreasonable. And so I waited, I held off, I did not book that. And when I got off of the cruise ship, I just walked around by the port and there were like bus services right there for like 20 euros per person that take you from the port to Pisa, Florence, and back. So we pretty much got the same exact experience that a lot of the people from the cruise ship who actually paid for the excursion through the boat got, but without paying all that money. So I'm really glad that we didn't do a lot of the excursions on the ship and that we kind of knew like, all right, I'm gonna hold off on that because you could save a lot of money if you just do it yourself, if you just kind of like talk to local people from where you're visiting and see like what else is out there that's more affordable. But that being said, I definitely do not regret spending almost $200 on the excursions because I saw some amazing things. Went through the museums at the Vatican, did a tour of that, did a tour of the Colosseum at night when I was in Rome. I got to just see the Foro Romano, which is like the Roman Forum, like the political center of Rome from way back during ancient Roman times. Like there were so many cool things that I got to do. Like I wouldn't be able to do those things if I didn't pay for those excursions because a lot of times you just don't have access to get in. And if you do, usually have to wait in a long line for hours. So when you buy your ticket, you know, with like a group tour or something like that, you're able to skip the line. So for me, it was like worth it. It was really a great deal, and I got to see so many cool sites and go to so many cool places. Now, one place where I was able to save a lot of money was in transportation, besides like the cruise ship and the flights, because once I got to different places, getting around wasn't really so hard. A lot of the places I went to on the cruise were actually really small. Like Monaco was actually really tiny. It's like a small state. City-state that's technically in France, but it's not like French, it's actually its own state, but it's so small. Like one side of it is the Mediterranean Sea and the other three sides is France, and you could literally walk across from Monte Carlo, which is like the most famous thing in Monaco, and walk across from Monte Carlo all the way to France. So you could literally cross the street, you're like, oh, now I'm in France, and then when you cross the street back, like, oh, now I'm in Monaco. So you could be like in two states at the same time, which is like pretty cool, two countries at the same time, which is actually really cool. So that was awesome to go see that. But instead of like taking a taxi to go around, it was just like easy to walk because everything was really close to each other. And you could literally walk into France and see like some of the markets and the people and like the locals. And so for me, it's like, all right, I could take a taxi to like save time. But at the same time, if you just walk, yeah, it takes a little bit longer, but you get to see more. You get to see the people, how they live and everything. As long as it's not like raining or snowing or any crazy bad weather, usually like my go-to is to just walk places or to take public transportation, which are are the two main ways that I got around when I was in any of the countries that I traveled to, and that really helped me save money. So when it comes to taxis and buses, I didn't really spend a lot of money in that category. I only spent about like $62, $63 in that category, so it really wasn't a lot of money. And then at the end of the day, the trip was really nice because I was splitting everything with my boyfriend, so that really helps too. If you have a travel buddy to go to a trip with you, it's so nice because you get to split everything. For example, like when we got to Rome, we stayed in a hostel, and it was actually really cute. Like you could get a private room in the hostel, which was really nice in Rome. And we were there for 5 days. It was only $35 per night, so we ended up only spending like $100 and maybe $80 or something like that. And after splitting it between the two of us, it only was like $90 or $95 that I was responsible for the hotel, for the hostel. And then when we're in London for that one night, we got an Airbnb really close to the airport, and it was only like $30 each. So at the end of the day, staying at different hostels and like Airbnbs and stuff like that is not that expensive if you have people to split it with. But if it's all just you and you're traveling by yourself, it can tend to be a little bit more expensive. So instead of getting like a private room in a hostel, you might have to do like the shared room in the hostel and stuff like that to save a little bit more money. Now, there were some like random things that we had to pay for. We had to buy like an adapter so that we could plug in our devices, like laptop, and charge our phones. So the adapter was like $20 on Amazon. We split it. That was $10 for me. So like some of those miscellaneous costs kind of like added up, but it wasn't that bad. And then the last thing that ended up costing money through the 30 days that I was away was paying for my stuff to get stored in that unit. That was like the 5x5 storage unit, and that was probably about $120, a little bit under $120. And then once I got back, I had to go and pick up the stuff and move it into the new apartment. So we had to get a U-Haul van, and that was like $85 each. So at the end of the day, it's not terrible to like think about all the costs that went into this 30-day trip, because I realized like, well, it's about $100 a day. I think about all the places that I saw, all the things that I did, all the things that I got to experience, and the fact that pretty much 2 months of my rent, I'm not necessarily responsible for, because my lease didn't really start until January 15th. And then I used my security deposit to pay for a little bit of the rent when I did come back from January 15th to February 1st. So I don't really have to pay rent again until February 1st. So that was really nice. And so I really overall do think that the trip was worth it for me. But that being said, if I was trying to do like a budget-friendly trip and like save a lot of money, I would never spend $3,300 on a 30-day trip. I spent a lot less than that when I was in Barcelona 2 summers ago. So it's definitely possible to travel on a much tighter budget. But I'm just sharing, you know, my trip the way it happened. I was away for a while, and a lot of people writing to me like, where are you? We haven't seen a new video for 2020. So just wanted to share the update. You know where I was, you know the budget. Definitely want to hear from you guys. What do you think about my trip? Do you think I'm crazy for spending that much money, especially because I'm always talking about saving money on my channel? Or do you think that from what I said, it was obviously worth it for me, so it's fine? I would want to hear you guys in the comments. And then if you've been to any of the places that I went to, let me know. If you want to go to any of those places, definitely check out the spreadsheet that I put in the description box, which has a few of the links to places that I went to and things that I did while I was in different cities. So definitely check that out if you're interested in traveling to any of these places. But that's pretty much what I have for you guys. Thanks for catching my first video of 2020. And if you have any questions, you can always email me at MissBeHelpful@gmail.com. You can also call this Google Voice number and leave me a voicemail message. Then that way I can hear it. And then if I want to respond to it, I will post it right here on my channel, so you'll hear your own voice. Plus, you'll get to hear my response to your voice recording. And yeah, that's pretty much it. You guys could also follow me on social media. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram. A lot more active here on YouTube and on Instagram, but obviously just reach out to me wherever. And yeah, that's pretty much what I have for you guys. Till next time, peace.